Hi guys, it's Kelly here and I'm back with another video. Today's video features this cute little stamp set from Colorado Craft Company, and the name of it is called Teacups and Mice. This is by Chris Lauren, and these designs are totally adorable. So I have stamped, there's 3 mice and 3 teacups in the set, and I have done a 3-card set, so I stamped them all individually, and I'm just going to be doing 1-layer cards, just some little mini watercolor scenes with my Zig Clean Color Markers. I am stamping in Hero Arts Intense Black ink. This is Copic safe, but also waterproof. So I'm just going to go ahead and stamp my mouse down because I want him to be in the forefront, and then I'm going to create a mask for him. My go-to masking paper is the Eclipse masking paper. I just like that it's on a roll and I can just cut off as much as I need. But there's a bunch of other really good ones on the market as well. This is just the one that I prefer. Once my mask is done, I'm going to put that in place. If you're not a person who's into fussy cutting or masking, that's totally fine. They have dies that match this. You could pick those up. I just, crafting on a budget, and I got to make a choice about what I spend my money on. I would rather be able to pick up another stamp set than pick up the dies. So that's just me. Here, I'm going to get my teacup in place. And then double check that mask, because sometimes, because the photopolymer stamps are a little bit sticky, they can pick up those masks. So I just had to put mine back in place before I did my stamping, and then I'm just going to do the same ink as I just stamped in, so they'll all have a nice black outline. Zig Clean Color Markers are pretty bright watercolors, and I love a bold black outline. Here you can see that I'm giving it the good old CPR method. Sometimes watercolor paper can be hard to get a good clear stamped image if you're only stamping it once, which is why the Misty is amazing. I have the 36 set of watercolor or Zig Clean watercolor markers, and then I've supplemented some colors because you can buy them individually. I opted to go with a little gray mouse. I thought that would be cute. So here I'm just putting down the pigment where I want the darkest parts to be. And then I'm going to use a number 2 round brush. This one that I have is from the Black Velvet line. They're kind of expensive. If you're not interested in making that kind of investment, Ranger has like a variety pack you can pick up. Those are also pretty good. So I'm just using a minimal amount of water and spreading out this pigment. I'm starting in the lightest area with clean water and then taking the water to the pigment and then just kind of letting it flow out from there. I find that that gives me the most control over my watercolors. Here I wanted his belly to be lighter, so again, filling that in with clean water and then taking the clean water to the pigment to let it kind of just fill in that little belly. Zig Clean Color Markers, you can go back in while it is still wet and add more pigment. It's not going to be, you're not going to put down as much pigment as you would if it was dry, because I'm working with such a minimal amount of water. Mine are pretty much dry by the time I'm going back in here. His belly was still a little damp. There was like a little sheen of water. And so you can see what I'm talking about, where up top by his ears, it added a lot more pigment because that was completely dry. Whereas like down below, it added just a little bit more pigment. So you just want to pay attention to that as you're layering colors. If your paper is still wet at all, you're just not going to put down as much pigment. So once I was happy with the level of gray we had going on, I'm going to add in just a little bit of pink to his ears. And I did this for all of the mice, added the little pink. And then I'm going to move on to my flower. So some things of note, if you are not familiar with the Zig Clean Color Markers, they do sell them in the packs. Like I said, mine's the 36 set. I never really felt the need to purchase a bigger one, though they do have a 48 and 72 and, so on and so forth. I found it easier to just hand pick the colors that I felt like my collection was missing. I would encourage you to, if you're looking at making this investment, I would encourage you to check several different places. Sometimes the craft stores that we know and love are not necessarily the best deals. Now, it can be worth it to save on shipping. Like if you're already placing an order with a store and they carry these, the price point isn't a big enough difference. But if you're going to be making a large purchase, sometimes the price point is definitely worth paying the difference for shipping. So I know Blick Arts or Dick Blick, they have individual markers for $278. Some craft stores, usually they're around $3.50, maybe $4 for each individual marker. Please do not shop on Amazon. I have seen them for $5. I've seen them for $8. Please don't go pay $8 for a marker that you can buy for $2.87. So that's my little, make sure you shop around is all I'm saying. For almost all of my marker needs, I shop at Blick Arts because I have, that's typically where the best deal is. And so I just wait until I'm making a large purchase and either I can qualify for free shipping, or if they have a sale where they have free shipping going on, I just wait and hit up those. So for the flower, this looks like a carnation to me. And so I decided that I was going to go with purple. I'm starting with my lightest color. I put down again the pigment where I wanted it to be the darkest, and then I am just kind of drawing it out. Because this area is so jam-packed with detail, it's not really going to read the same as like my mouse belly does, where that's clearly very lighter, like a whole lot lighter. This is going to be a little bit more compact, and so I'm going to have to be a little bit more careful about where I place my colors. So I'm really just putting down, this is a darker purple now. This is not the same purple we used before. And I'm really just putting this where the petals are being tucked in. And then I'm even going to use even less water than I did before just to pull that color out into the petal. And this one I did work in a lot of layers. Some of the other flowers I didn't really feel like I needed to do that. But this one, because it is so compact, which is also why I chose it to be the one that's in regular, like it's not sped up. The next two cards will be sped up quite a bit, but I wanted you to be able to see this one because it is so compact, and just how, I'm using very minimal water, and then just going in and kind of spreading that color out while still trying to maintain some highlights and, still create those shadows so it has some dimension. I know that smaller images can be a little bit overwhelming, but they're also the most forgiving, because there is so much going on there. You don't really notice if there is an error or if there should be a highlight here and it's missing. So for the bottom, I started with just like a middle of the road yellow green. And I'm doing the same thing that I've been doing, starting in the area that has no pigment and then using clean water to take it to the pigment. These leaves, I did do a lot more shading while it was wet. So I went back in immediately with my marker and then went back in with an even darker green to add some more shading. I will go back over that. These watercolors, this particular medium, these Zig Clean Color Markers, layer really nicely with different colors. So if you're not getting the shadow or the dimension that you want, don't be afraid to kind of go back over it. Watercolor paper is made to take a lot of water. So if you're, continually adding to it, you're not going to ruin your paper. Now, you may be better served to let it dry and then try to add another layer of color. just so that it doesn't get kind of like messy and washed out. But this black outline is really helping us to kind of maintain our image integrity, and it's not as important if you were doing like no line coloring. So now that my top is completely dry, I am going to go back in with that darker purple again and just kind of add some deeper shadows into the petals. So I'm just looking for lines that are already drawn there, and then I'm just adding just a line of color right next to wherever that line is. A little bit of water to go in there and just kind of soften those edges so it doesn't look like I just drew right onto the flower. But again, even if this gets away from you, you can either go back over it with clean water, blot it up with a clean paper towel, or you can do what I'm going to do, which is I will go back in with a white gel pen and just kind of hit the tips of the different petals to really set off those highlights. For the ground here, because it wouldn't be a mini scene if we didn't have any sort of scene in the background, right? I originally thought about doing like a little countertop, but I thought that it would be so much cuter if all of these little mice were in kind of like a little patch of grass with a little bit of sunlight. I thought that that would be a good way to bring in some more color and then give them somewhere where that they're presenting their little teacups. So here I'm keeping the color that I put down to a minimum, like right underneath my images, and then I'm just adding clean water to kind of spread that out. Here I realized that my ground didn't go up high enough behind my mouse, so I need to add in some more color there. Again, if you want it to be softer, you're going to use more water. If you want it to be more like sharp or more detailed, you're going to wait until it dries. Here you're going to be able to see as I'm adding my grasses, and I'm just going direct to paper here with a flicking motion. Some of them are softer because the paper behind it was still wet, and some of them are sharper because the paper behind it was completely dry. So two completely different looks. And then once I was happy with my little patch of grass, I'm going to go in and add in the sky portion. I chose just a relatively light blue. I added the most color around my images. This is not something that you have to do. There is no right or wrong way to put in a blue sky, but because I was looking for these little concentrated mini scenes and to leave the rest of my card pretty open, that is how I chose to put the color right up next to the image. You can see that I am adding water all around the image, like up above it and then next to it. And that is to help my blue sky kind of like bleed out into the rest of the card and fade into white. Sometimes this can get away from us, and then, our mini scene is no longer a mini scene. It's like a, edge to edge watercolor everywhere type scene. And I have a trick for fixing that, which I will show you on the next card. If you have any bleeding, which I did with some of them, where like my purple bled into my sky or my pink bled into my sky or whatever, just wait until it's dry, put down another layer of blue, and then really softly blend that out. And 9 times out of 10, it's going to cover your boo-boo, even with something as bright as a red. So here now, this is all going to be sped up, and I will interject periodically with different things that I learned. But for the most part, that's our instruction, and now we're on to story time. So I think I'm over the worst of the COVID at this point. I still wake up in the morning with a little bit like congested or a little bit of I need to clear my throat type feeling. But I have stopped getting up in the middle of the night to take meds so that I can, have a clear nasal passage to breathe. So I'm counting that as a huge win, because getting up in the middle of the night, already, obviously, I have to get up in the middle of the night because I have a little one. and she's a good nighttime sleeper. I'm gonna jinx myself for tonight. That's what just happened. I shouldn't have said it. I shouldn't have said it out loud. I shouldn't have. But for the most part, but sometimes she does wake up and she needs her pacifier. She's lost her pacifier. So I do have to wake up for those. And then in addition to that, waking up to go all the way downstairs and take medicine, and blech, it's awful. Back to this card real quick. So here, instead of layering the colors, I put down both of them at the same time, the lightest color and the darkest. And you will see in doing it this way, overall, the color has a lot less dimension. Those colors bleed out into each other. And so because of that, it's a little bit harder to maintain, the lighter tones and the darker tones because I put them down together. If you're looking for more dimension in your watercolor painting, then I would recommend that you do 2 different layers of colors. So your lightest first, and then go back in and add your darkest into your shadows, versus just putting down the lighter and the darker together like I would do with my Copics, because you just tend to lose a lot of the dimension and then you have to go back and try to put it in. So far, Peanut has still come out unscathed from this. I actually made him take a test today because he said he had a headache. So I was like, just to be cautious, but nope, he's still negative. So thank God for that. It was pretty miserable. So I'm hoping that he can get away with it completely unscathed. Cause it wasn't a super good time to be sick. While I was sick, I was still obviously creating and doing things. But I did have 2 days over the weekend where I pretty much didn't want to do a thing. And unfortunately, Eric was home from work, so he took on the childcare. He let me sleep in, which I really appreciated because I was just kind of so tired and just felt like yuck. So you probably haven't heard me at all talk about anything with the furniture business at all because we haven't really had any time to get to it since the arrival of our sweet jelly bean. It's just not something that we've really had time for. Well, now I guess it's been since he went to day shift. It's just not something that we've had time to do. But we do have one project on the books. One of the girls that I work with, we're doing a dresser for her nursery, and her son is due in July, so we have to knock that out. So hopefully we have some babysitters lined up this weekend, and we will be able to get out into the garage together. Okay, so back to the card. Here you can see my little mini scene has kind of gotten a little bit out of control, and it's getting more edge to edge. I'm going to go in with a wet baby wipe. And I'm going to blot all around the edges. I'm being very careful not to take my baby wipe into my image, but just to kind of soften up the edges and absorb some of that color so that it stays a more concentrated scene versus this edge-to-edge painting. I wanted it to be more of like a circular focal point. I hope that makes sense. And again, here you'll be able to see where the grasses kind of fade off because I was putting down the grass blades as part of it was wet and part of it was dry. Here I mixed my 2 colors. I mixed my gray and my brown to color this little mouse, and I did put them down together, but I put them down together on purpose because I wanted them to mix together and become more like one shade, like the same way that I did the red. I think it's a lily. The way that I did that one, but this time it was intentional. I wanted the colors to blend together and become more of a grayish brown color, just so I had a third type of colored mouse. And you can certainly do that with any of your colors. They all work really well together. So don't be afraid if you don't have a certain color to mix your Zig Clean Color Markers and kind of come up with your own color. So yeah, we really haven't had any time to get out into the garage, and we have to get this dresser done. Fortunately, we are doing a combination of paint and stain. Now, you would probably think a combination is more time consuming than just staining or just painting, but staining is by far the most time consuming because you have to strip all of the old finish off. With painting, you can just buff it to give it like something for the paint to hold on to. So it's called scuff sanding. So you can just use, scuff sanding on the part that you're painting, prime it, and then paint it, and you're done with it. You don't have to strip all of that old finish off like you do need to do when you're staining. So she has, her theme for her nursery is Winnie the Pooh, which is adorable. And so she's got a lot of, well, how did she describe it? She said espresso colored furniture. So I asked her, I sent her some swatches for some paint, and the one that she picked was called Leather Bound. And now I'm a little bit nervous because I'm not sure what she thinks espresso colored is. Espresso to me is a cooler brown. And so I'm worried the leather bound won't be compatible. But it's her room, and I sent her the swatches, so I'm thinking maybe the espresso she's talking about is warmer than what I'm picturing. Not really positive. This teacup, this little rose teacup, I did go in and shade my hot pink with my purple. This is another example of just mixing two colors. I did not put them down at the same time. I put them down separately, but they still work really nicely with each other to create kind of this magenta colored flower, which honestly is my favorite flower. I don't know why. With the Zig Clean Color Markers, you've probably heard me say this before, the hot pink is by far my favorite one. I don't know, I'm just drawn to it, this bright hot pink. Speaking of hot pink, somebody had asked me in a previous video, it's not this one, I have on a peach nail polish in this one, but in a previous video I had on a hot pink, and I did answer them in the comments, but it's called Va Va Voom by Orly, and they have like a whole like neon summer collection, which I bought. It's probably been like 3 years now, but it's still out there on the market because I Googled it, and those are great summer colors. Here for the grasses, instead of just doing greens, I also added in some yellow, just again so all of the cards went together, but they didn't look identical. I didn't feel like every single one needed to have this color grass. I did use the same sky color for all of them, because I really didn't have a lighter blue in my set. This is the lightest one I've got, and so that's just the one I stuck with. So yeah, I haven't been out in the garage in a long time. I'm a little bit apprehensive about getting out there, just because working from home now, like I spend the majority of my time obviously making videos, doing releases, blog hops, my own content such as this. And so I haven't really had time to go out there, and I'm a little bit apprehensive, like what if I have to fall behind? But it has to get done. Like there is no choice here. It has to get done and be completed, or this poor woman isn't going to have a dresser for her nursery. So hopefully we don't have too many setbacks. Here, I love a bold black outline. That's just what I'm doing here. I'm going in with my EK Success journaling pens, but a Micron or a Copic outliner will do the same thing. And then I'm just outlining everything in black. I did go in, as I told you before, and add in some white highlights. Somebody had said to me in a message, and I apologize because I can't remember who it was, that their white gel pen kind of absorbed into the color, that it wasn't a bright white. And I have noticed that with my watercolors, my Zigs especially, it doesn't stay super bright white. It kind of absorbs the color that's behind it. And I think that just happens depending upon your medium. For me, it makes enough of a difference to keep doing it. All these sentiments are actually in the same set, and the Chris Lauren, her style, I think is beautiful. And I actually have another stamp set from the Colorado Craft Company that is hers as well, called Best Friends Forever, which is like a little rose heart half wreath, which you'll see in another upcoming video, which is just beautiful. So here I just went through and added some shimmer onto the flowers. Be advised, it can move some of your pigment around, so make sure you're paying attention to where you put that marker. And then that's it. That is all 3 cards. So thank you guys so much for joining me. I hope that you learned a little something and are inspired to make something, and I will catch you guys in the next video. Bye.